Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for watching On the Town with Tanya. Welcome back. Welcome back. Please like and share the video. We appreciate you. And remember, it's not because we care about numbers. It's because we care about people. So tonight's guest is a doctor of clinical psychology. He's a certified school psychologist and author, and a Pan-Afrikanist who is an expert on the education and mental health of African and African-American children. Please help me welcome Dr. Umar Fatunde. Hi, doctor. How are you?
Peace and Pan-Africanism. Glad to be with you both.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. So we're here to talk about bullying and drugs and how it plays into the lives, or it's playing out into the lives of our teenagers, particularly Black boys and girls, because we know everybody else is cared for, and our kids usually, unfortunately, don't seem to be cared for. So the first topic I guess we'll go with is the state of our youth. Honestly, like, is it me, or is it that a lot of young people just seem to be, while there's the ones that are doing great, but there's a lot that seem to be doing things that are way left field, like the grab and goes and the smoking weed all day, and everybody's getting like just so much stuff that's going on. And I wonder, is this all effects of things that have happened, seeing on TV that were labeled as bad? The Black boys, you can't walk through a neighborhood because you might get shot, saying the girls are sexualized, just so many things. I wonder, what is it that is causing some of our young people, and I won't say all, because I know some of y'all out there getting A's and doing your thing and making it happen, but there's some who are really going off the wall right now. What do you think?
Well, there's an African proverb that says the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. I believe that our children are a consistent printout of the dysfunction that is array within the Black community. They cannot be separated from their parents. The parents cannot be separated from the community, and the community cannot be separated from the white racist power structure in which we are forced to survive. Stated another way, we have neglected our children. We have abandoned them, and I'm speaking collectively as a people, not as individuals. I'm speaking as a community. And we are so disinterested in saving our young people that we often try to scapegoat single Black mothers as the cause behind every problem that we see exemplified within the youth. Whenever there's a conversation, and I'm a part of many of them, town hall dialogue, interview, book, panel discussion, media story, you name it, the single Black mother is always scapegoated. And the reason she's scapegoated is because the Black church doesn't want any accountability, nor will we make it take any. Black politicians don't want any accountability, nor will we make them take any. Black business owners want no accountability, nor will we make them take any. Our Black Greek fraternities and sororities don't want any accountability, nor will we make them take any. And our nonprofit grassroots organizations don't want any accountability, nor will they take any. And of course, the so-called woke movement, the conscious community, which is nothing but an intellectual masturbation culture, they also don't want any accountability, nor will we make them take any. Our children are doing what they do because they have been allowed to do so, and many of them have been forced to raise themselves. So this is what you get when a community neglects itself. And guess what? I have news for everyone. It doesn't get better. It only gets worse. All psychological illness gets worse over time. There has never been a mental issue, I don't care if it's bipolar, borderline, depression, anxiety, bulimia, or post-traumatic slavery disease. No problem gets better over time. It only gets worse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. You just really summed it all up nice, Rich, right? Okay, we can go down. I mean, that was you hit everything dead on that I've thought about as someone who used to be a teacher assistant, worked with kids in the Boys and Girls Club, various modalities working with kids. And I always say, this behavior is a product of something that happened before. And what are those things that happened before? But nobody ever wants to answer them. And they always want to say, oh, well, it's because of this or because of that. No, we need to address it. Don't just go, which is a favorite one, let's give him medication. Tommy's a little too hyper. Let's give him some medication. What does he need medication for? Why can we assess
And
it?
by the way, there would be no need for medication if we still valued spending time with our children. Medication is an outgrowth of the gross community and societal neglect within this country. And as you know, whenever white people catch a cold, black people catch the flu, we are their greatest imitators. And so whatever they do, we have to take it to the 20th power. There would be no need for Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, Medidate, Zoloft, Paxil. There would be no need for psychiatric medication. There would be no psychiatric industrial complex if black people still valued spending time with their children. We don't have time to teach them how to behave, so we give them drugs. We don't have time to spend time with them, so we give them antidepressive medications and anti-anxiety medications and mood stabilizers to deal with the side effects of us no longer taking an interest in their lives.
Oof! Wow, you're hitting all the things I want to talk about to a degree that I'm like, whoa! I don't even have to ask that now. It's just, I mean, what does someone, a single parent, very broke, in a bad situation, what can they do? Like, if they have to go to work and, they send their kids to the daycare, the school, wherever. What is there anything that they can be doing to make this better? Because I believe it starts at the root of the problem starts when they're very young.
It is, but I also think it does start when they're young, as soon as they come home from the hospital. But it also starts with the community. No single mother should be raising a boy by herself, period. The community should not allow it. See, one of the things we have to get away from as an African people in America is this Eurocentric concept of individualism that says my children belong to me. They are none of your business. What happens in my home is none of your business. How I parent is none of your business. From an African-centered perspective, those statements are completely false. In African society, the children come through the parents. They don't belong to the parents. They belong to the community. There's no such thing as privatization of child rearing. How you raise your children is not a private thing. Your children's dysfunction is not a private thing. Their paternal abandonment, their maternal neglect, it's not a private situation. And the reason it's not private is because the community suffers the consequences of poor parenting. It is the community that has to suffer from the violence. It is the community that has to suffer from the pedophilia. It is the community that has to suffer from the anger, the theft. It is the community that suffers when parents cannot do their job. And that's why the community has to take a role, an active role in the raising of children, because we are the ones who suffer when the children are not raised correctly.
Oh, that is so, you are so dead on. I mean, if you think of all the things going on from the grab and goes at the malls, from the shootings in Chicago to the shootings, the regular shootings, doesn't matter what kid it is. I just believe that if you don't have a good sense of the parenting, but then on top of that, the community, because I mean, I was a foster kid, and people say, well, how'd you turn out so well? Honestly, my community, I mean, nobody's going to let me walk down the street and do what I want and think I want to do. They're going to check me real quick. They're going to check me. And I think that all that, you're absolutely dead on. All of that is missing. It is absolutely missing. I've seen kids now do things. I'm like, what'd you say to that lady who's like 80? What'd you just say? And they'll be like, yeah, I said such. And I'm like, what? That would have never happened when I was growing up. So I think you're really onto something.
And another big piece, Queen, is we are missing the structure that comes from a serious, responsible, committed council of elders. We are missing our councils of elders, which are a pillar in African culture. If we had our elders organized, they could put a lot of structure and a lot of accountability back into the community. But they have been dismissed by the younger generations. And many of our elders have engaged in behavior that would be less than honorable themselves. So many of them are afraid to step up and be that leadership that we need, because they're afraid of being called out for some of the wrongs they have engaged in the past. If we had elders, so much of the conflict between man and woman, so much of the conflict between father and mother, so much of the conflict that revolves around people doing other people wrong, stealing from other people, some of the petty squabbles that take place in the neighborhood, a lot of the killings even could be reduced if we had a council of elders who actually serve as a judicial branch of community government. That's what the purpose of the elders are. So when someone does something wrong to you in Black America, your only recourse is personal justice or white man justice. That should not be the dichotomy, personal justice and white man justice. This should also be community justice, but you need your councils of elders in order to do that.
Well, what do you think? I mean, how do we activate that? How do we, I mean, is it, you know, I go back to my community, you go back to yours, he goes back to his, and that's how we started, one person at a time? How do we do this? Because no one seems to be interested, quite frankly.
Well, one of the things I'm going to do as soon as we get our certificate of occupancy at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy in Wilmington, Delaware, and for my supporters who are viewing the conversation, we completed all of our renovations. We're just waiting for an HVAC inspection and a certificate of occupancy. But once we're up and running officially and can have people come into the buildings, we plan on holding a Council of Elders conference where we bring everyone above the age of 65, okay, to come and sit down and put some rules to this. How should it operate? Who will be on the national board? Who will be the Council of Elders in each state, each county, each city, each neighborhood? How will they be elected? How will they be deselected if their behavior is less than honorable? So that is one of the many conferences and undertakings that we will definitely be getting involved in as soon as we have our permission to bring the public into the school building.
That is phenomenal. I can't wait for that.
Congratulations too.
Yes, congratulations too. Yes, in this school, I know. I can't wait. I can't wait for the first graduate, because it's just, to me, it's like a lot of people who have the power. They've done nothing. They just do nothing. And I see just very few people that say, no, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. So I appreciate you so much for coming up with the idea of the camp, for investing in our kids. And also I've seen the work you do, where you do the, what do they call, when parents' kids are labeled, you do the consultations when the parents' kids are labeled as ADHD and all these labels and medications, whatever, you sit with them and talk with them on what to do about that. That's amazing, because as someone that used to see a lot of scripts written, I was like, what is going on? And why do parents just go with what they say? Like, that's your kid.
That is the hypnosis that most of us, to some degree or another, and we all have to catch ourselves from time to time. Yes. We as an African people, because of that 246 years, we suffer from a hypnosis of European authority. And so whenever there's a white person in the room, when there's a white person in charge, when there's a white person who engages us, sometimes we can fall into that hypnosis of European authority, that slave master syndrome, where we find ourselves being passive participants in white people's agendas. And I think there's no place where you can find us being under the influence of, or the hypnosis of European authority, than in the schoolhouse. Some of the biggest, boldest Black parents on the street, when they walk into the schoolhouse and they have to go to a meeting for their child, they get very quiet, they get very docile, they get very passive. They fall under that hypnosis of European authority, and they start letting white people do whatever they want to their children. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote Psychoacademic Holocaust, which you mentioned earlier, and Black Parent Advocate, to try to shake our parents out of this collective hypnosis of European authority and start taking responsibility for our children, because there's just too many children in special ed. There's too many children on psychiatric meds. There's too many children misdiagnosed with autism. Although autism is real, we have a lot of children being misdiagnosed with it because they're telling our parents at 2 and 3 that their children is autistic. And they very well may be, but you can't prove it that young. I've been evaluating children for autism for over 20 years. There's no way I can definitively tell you that your 20-month-year-old child is autistic. But the reason they're making these premature autistic diagnoses is to get the money. It's all about money. The sooner your child name goes into the computer, the sooner they can build the state for those services. And that's how these not-for-profit educational institutions, early intervention services, disability programs, preschools and daycares, that's how they operate, by getting the children in and getting them in young. And since special ed begins at the age of 3, they like to slap a label on your child right after their 3rd birthday to start the money train going.
Yes. And the bad part about that is it follows them forever.
It follows them forever. Now, you can have it reversed,
right?
But it's very difficult to get the evaluations, the previous evaluations, removed from their record. That's the problem. So you can get the diagnosis taken off, but those previous evaluations that said your child did in fact have the disability, it's not as easy to get those out of the record. They're permanent, which, you know, can negatively impact on your child. And what a lot of parents don't know, if you plan to send your child to a private school at some point in the future, private schools do not have to take children with disabilities. They never tell you that. Private schools in America do not have to accept children with IEP. Special ed is a federal program. I just consulted with a parent last week who got manipulated by her child's private school into getting a psychological evaluation. And right after they did the evaluation and determined this kid to be learning disabled or emotionally disturbed, they then told the parent, we have to disinvite your child from this private school because we do not have the services he needs. They didn't tell the parent up front that if we find him to have a disability, he got the lead. They did not tell the parent. They manipulate parents, tell you, let's get him tested. They never tell you if he's found to have a disability, he got to go back to the public school. And that's exactly what they did to this mother. They bust him back, sent him right back to the public school because private schools do not have to take children with disabilities. And because a lot of Black parents don't know their rights, one of the quickest ways to get a Black kid out of a white private school is to get them evaluated and labeled.
That's just, that's just mind blowing. And I learned this later when I was in a classroom. I didn't know it back then, but I feel bad, really bad for foster youth because they really getting it right now. They get it a lot. Medication.
Because they have no true advocate.
No,
the problem with the foster care children is they have no true advocate, even though they are assigned advocates. You know, those advocates are employees of the state.
Exactly.
You understand? And it's been research that's shown that Black foster care children, they are the most medicated and the most special educated, and they're also some of the most sexually abused as well. So the worst thing that can happen to a Black child is to end up in foster care. And then after you used to being medicated, special educated, so you're addicted to chemicals, you can't read or write, and then you've been sexually abused. You know what that is? Those are the perfect ingredients for a life of childhood prostitution. And that's what a lot of them end up going into right after they are granted, what is it? They're granted, what is it when they make you as a teenager? Emancipated minor. They become emancipated minors, depending on your state, at 15 and 16 years old. And, you know, you're already addicted to drugs. You're used to being sexually exploited. You can't read or write. So for many of our children, foster care is the introduction into the exploitative world of child sex trafficking.
Well, while we're on that subject, what do you think about Texas? They want to privatize foster care.
Well, and they're not the only state. There's others who are also embarking on that path. I'm not surprised for 3 reasons. Number one, the child sex trafficking market always needs fresh bodies. And everybody knows that child court and the foster care systems, the adoptive care programs, the elected officials, they're all involved in child sex trafficking. It cannot run this smoothly without the participation of government agencies. And I've been told this by people who actually work in the system, that this will never stop until you start finding the people in the system that are participating in this. So that's number one. They need fresh bodies. Number two, we live in a capitalist society based on supply and demand. So that automatically means what? If they're going to privatize foster care, that means they're going to have to create a demand for more children to go into the foster care system. So that means a lot more Black people are going to be losing their children. There's going to be a lot more false charges of abuse and neglect. And one of the big issues that we as a community have not tackled when it comes to the child welfare system is how these caseworkers that they send out to our families often act in the capacity of judge, jury, and executioner. You know, they're not a judge, they're not attorneys, they're not police, but they act as judge, jury, and executioner. Just by one visit to your home, they can have your child removed. It should not be that easy. It should not be that simple. And your child abuse clearance can be messed up permanently behind these quick, false, premature allegations that are made by these child service workers. But again, now that it's privatized, they're going to make it even easier for them to take our children away from them so they can make money off them, number one, and so they can feed them to the child sex trafficking market, number two. And let us also not forget organs, okay? The organ harvesting industry. You know, these children are not being snatched off the street. And let us not forget about the children who are simply being kidnapped in broad daylight. Thousands of them every year. Now, if the child kidnapping and child sex trafficking market was being done by people on the street without any government involvement, how do you explain the consistently high numbers of Black children who are sexually trafficked and the consistently high level of numbers of Black children who are kidnapped every day? There's no way you can have thousands of Black children sexually trafficked and kidnapped consistently year after year without government participation.
And nobody knows where they went to. It's like,
because half of them are with the government.
Well, I don't know where they at, but I know they somewhere, because somebody high up has to have them. Because I remember in DC, there was like 1,000 girls within a certain radius of a block. I was like, wait, what?
Absolutely.
I was like, 1,000 girls? That's crazy. It was
biological weapons research, organ harvesting, and of course, in the case of Black girls, which per capita are the most sexually trafficked human beings in the country, it's also about trying to isolate the mitochondrial DNA of the Black woman, because white women are losing their numbers. They're not getting pregnant. They're not able to hold on to them babies. The numbers of white people around the world is declining. And so they feel that if they can somehow isolate the mitochondrial DNA from the Black woman and surgically implant it in the white woman, they might be able to stabilize white births, because they are losing their numbers. They've already been a global minority, and they're at risk of getting even smaller.
Well, I saw an article in the, I want to say it was the New York Times, but it was an old article. But they were saying how at one of the cities, like there was no white births or something. And I was like, what? So before I thought it was all conspiracy theory. And I was like, okay, whatever.
No, but Associated Press has actually reported it. No, it's the real deal. It came from AP. 25 of 50 states. 25 of 50 states have more white people transitioning than coming into the world.
Wow. Well, that plays into a lot of some. So here's the thing. I never like to go too far into conspiracy theory, because they're going to say, oh, that's just conspiracy theory. It's a bunch of garbage, whatever. But to me, when things start adding up, I'm like, well, if the kids are missing and you don't know where they're at, and you're supposed to, and you don't know what's going on, but then there's over here about this, organ stealing, whatever, all these things. How am I supposed to not believe it? Because you can't come up with an answer where those kids are. Even the migrant children that was missing, where are they? No one still knows where they are. Oh, I heard stories of where they are. I don't know how true it is, but those things, I just never know. What can we do is always my question is, what are we supposed to be doing? I know the community needs to have their eyes open and their ears open.
First of all, no Black woman or girl should be traveling at night without an escort. Black men should have an escort system where we take voluntarily or for low cost, take Black women to work, those who have to work the midnight shift, the graveyard shift, that late night. If our daughters have to come home from cheerleading practice, or basketball, or volleyball, or their after school job, especially now, since we're going from summer into fall with the fall equinox coming up in just a couple of days, time is going to go up or back or what have you, and it's going to get darker sooner. And that means our girls are going to be coming home later. There should be men to escort them. There should be buses and vans that take our people around. If any other community suffered the type of sexual trafficking that Black girls suffered, especially our 14 to 17-year-old girls, they are the most at risk. If this was any other community, they would have already organized something to protect those daughters. But because we are a disorganized people and we're not interested in being organized. And one of the biggest reasons we're not interested in being organized is Black people don't want any accountability or responsibility to one another. This is another one of those psychological hangovers from slavery. We're so used to answering to white people and to non-Black people that most of us have no interest in being accountable to the community itself. We would rather let the community go to hell than be accountable to other Black people. We don't have any racial integrity. Our racial integrity and our racial honor has been beat out of us. It has been terrorized out of us. We have a religious integrity. If you disrespect my Christianity, I'll fight you. You disrespect my Islam, I'll kill you. You disrespect my fraternity, my sorority, my lodge, my gang, my professional organization, I'm ready to go to war. But when Black people are assaulted, when Black people are marked for genocide, when Black girls are sexually trafficked, you hardly get any outrage from the Black community at all because we have lost our racial honor code.
Wow.
It is racial honor code. Wow. Well, speaking of one of the topics, I wanted to go back to the bullying because our kids, we have to figure out solutions for them because it's like for me, I don't even know what to do at this point. Like, you got the community, really the parents are the number one line of defense. That's the first one, like you said, starting early, but also the kids having their own accountability. I really strongly believe that because of media, and this is years worth, not just now, but years worth, starting from the birth of a nation and everything else, that we're always, villainized somehow or another. And that translated from our parents to us in some way. Black boys now know, they know, they don't say it, but they know if I go into a certain neighborhood with a hoodie on, I'm going to be suspect right away. Black girls know that they go somewhere, they're going to be, someone's going to think that they put out quick because this is what the media and everything has told us. What can we start, not teaching children or saying to kids to try to change that, especially once they're in it, because they're joining gangs, they're doing the bullying of each other, the mall grabbing, all these things are just symptoms to me of all the other stuff that they're missing, that they're feeling.
Glad you said symptom. I'm glad you said symptom. Great and honorable Frederick Douglass once said, too often when we discuss our problem as Black people, all we discuss is symptoms and not core causes. I'm glad you mentioned symptom because our children join gangs because they don't have responsible, healthy families to belong to. A gang is a surrogate family. If you have your mother, if you have your father, if you have your aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins around you to support you, to love you, to spend time with you, to give you a sense of identity, you don't need a gang. Go to any gang and look who's at the gangs. Fatherless children, motherless children, homeless children. We have the epidemic of homeless Black children who are sleeping on streets and going to schools from, the street corner where they slept at last night. Yes. Our children are in rebellion, and they are in rebellion against the Black community because the Black community does not do for them what they see the children of other cultures have done for them. Look at what the Chinese do for Chinese children. Look at what the Arabs do for Arab children. Look at what the Mexicans do for Mexican children. Look at what the Jews do for Jewish children. You don't see that in the Black community. No. In other communities, they don't let the police kill you and get away with it. They don't let you go to schools where you are overly suspended and undereducated. Black children, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, Black children are the most unemployed, and they have the most difficult time of finding an after-school job or a summer job. What is the Black community doing to employ our young people? Absolutely nothing. So when we see them selling dope, joining gangs, killing each other, hustling credit cards, breaking into cars and everything else that they're doing because we have nothing to offer them. First of all, political science 101. You cannot get the attention of any people unless you're doing something for them. I don't care who it is. People don't pay attention unless you're meeting their needs. So if we want our children to pay attention, what are we going to do for them so they can pay attention? Are we going to build schools for them? Are we going to build jobs for them? Are we going to build programs for them?
Right.
The most dangerous hours of the school week is from 3 until 7. 3 p.m. until 7 is when most of our girls get pregnant or raped. And 3 until 7, it was most of our boys engage in criminal activity or get locked up. If we could just program for the hours of 3 until 7, we'll be in a much better place. But our children live in cities where most of the after-school programs are shut down. They don't have anything meaningful. I just spoke with a parent today. Her child's school has no extracurricular programs at all, but yet the school district still find money to hire more white people. How do you keep on hiring all these white people if you claim you don't have money for after-school programs? But again, it goes back to the community, not the parents, but the community, which includes the parents, but it's not limited to the parents. Why are we not at the school board meetings putting pressure on them to put the money into the programs that our children need? One of the biggest things the Black community needs to fight for, and I don't hear the Congressional Black Caucus talking about it. I don't hear the NAACP and Urban League talking about it. I know Reverend Al Sharpton is never going to talk about it because he's funded by the white racist labor unions, and that is to put the industrial building trade programs back into the high schools. They should have never been taken out. They started being removed in the 1970s. They were all but gone by the 1990s, which is the exact 20-year period that America started mass incarcerating Black males. The mass incarceration of Black males began when they start removing skills that pay the bills from the inner city, predominantly Black high schools. And the Black community has done nothing to fight for those programs to be put back because our leaders, our politicians, our preachers, they are scared of the white racist labor unions.
Yes, and that's so true. Because I'm sorry, Rich, I'll let you go too. That is so true. I think about even when I was in high school, they had BOCES, which is like education trade school. And so you could do cosmetology, whatever, get a trade. So when you leave high school, you're certified in something. They don't have that in none of my friends' inner city schools. I don't see it, but they have it up in the suburbs. And I'm like, how come we got the money and they don't? But before you say anything, Rich, I want to ask, why don't parents co-op together to create stuff?
Remember, it's not the parents, it's the community. Don't make them the scapegoat. It's the community. Most of our children, 2/3 of our children are raised by single mothers.
Right.
And that's
2/3 are raised by single mothers. We cannot expect them to take care of multiple children, work multiple jobs, feed them, clothe them, house them, and then deal with their own personal medical and psychological issues, and then expect them to go out and fight these white racist institutions. Black men are not doing enough for our children. We are living in probably the most selfish age I've ever seen for Black people. We've never been this selfish before. We don't care about nobody but ourselves, our children, and our immediate family. But the minute one of our own children robs us, kills us, disrespects us, then we want to call a whole tribunal on what to do about it. The time to get involved is to do something about it now, because what we are suffering from at the hands of our children is our collective community karma. The children are the karma. This is why you're afraid to walk to your car alone at night. This is why elders are being robbed at the ATM. I just saw a video of a kid who was like 13 robbing a queen mother who was in her 70s. It brings tears to your eyes. But this is what happens when the community doesn't look out for its young people. What did we expect? These children out here on the street right now are the grandchildren of the crack babies. They are the grandchildren of the crack babies, which means these are probably the first set of grandchildren in the history of Black America whose grandparents don't even know anything about Black history, whose grandparents don't even know anything about the Civil Rights Movement, or Medgar Evers, or Dr. King, or El Haj Malik El Shabazz, or an Honorable Marcus Garvey. They don't come from a family system that knows anything about racial cohesiveness. All they know about is selfishness, because when the Black community got hit with chemical warfare, crack, biological warfare, AIDS in the 1980s, it disintegrated the unity in the community, and we've never come together to try to repair the Black community after the devastation of the crack AIDS epidemic of the 80s.
And see that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on, going back to the community. Tanya and I were colleagues in the human service field, drug counseling. That's one of my specialties outside of family development and ministry myself. One of the things that I always protested against, if you will, was how the older generation bashes the younger generation. I always hear older cats talking about these young brothers need to pull their pants up, and I feel that the younger generation are used as scapegoats by the community to become self-righteous. And what I mean is, I used to work in jail systems, as a counselor. And I remember doing groups and lectures on the youthful offender program. And one of the things they said to me, they said, well, Rich, cats from your generation and beyond used to put packages in our hand. They taught us how to sell drugs. They either they was putting packages in our hand or didn't have time for us. So a lot of the older ones, to be honest with you, doctor, they don't want to take responsibility for the poor examples. They just want to look self-righteous by condemning the younger generation. But I quote Dick Gregory when I say this: what you see out on the street is a reflection of you. These are not thugs that came from another planet. So how did the drugs become the ultimate coping mechanism? How did the gangbangers become the second family? See, people love to talk about what's wrong, but don't want to talk about how it went wrong. And so, like, I remember my father had to come to my school one day because they put me in special ed. But I could read, I could write, I could count. You know what I'm saying? I have 2 college degrees, CASAC and substance abuse counseling. But my father protested because he was like, y'all have my son in a classroom where there's bars on the window. Bars on the window, almost like I was in prison. That's why when I started working in the jail, they were asking me, why do you seem like it doesn't bother you? And my school system, I'm not going to name the school system, but my school system when I was in middle school was like that. So the older generation doesn't want to take accountability on some of the poor examples that they have set for these young people. And so I guess my question to you, Brother Ifatunde, is now this is my personal opinion. I don't think the community can be rebuilt without the restructuring of family, but without making amends with these young people. I've gotten farther with young people in a jail house just by acknowledging where my generation went wrong. But a lot of times these older brothers, they talk at people, even in the conscious community. I was listening to one of your videos, Dr. Umar, and I was hearing you say, don't call me a part of that community. Now I understand why you say it, because all I see dudes doing is flexing on each other as a way of saying I got something over you. And the younger brothers are seeing this. They're seeing us compete with each other over knowledge, which is insane. That's like imitating our slave masters. So my opinion, and I want you to, give me your feedback on this, my brother. I don't think a real healing or real restructuring can take place until the older generation humbles itself and makes amends with the generation that they've abandoned.
I agree with you. But in making that amend, it's more than a verbal thing. It's almost like reparations for slavery. To say sorry is not enough.
Right.
You have to do something to change the systemic processes in the ghetto that give rise to the dysfunctional and criminal behavior that we don't want to see. In other words, you have to show that love by building institutions and opportunities. We do not fix the youth crisis without institutions of our own and opportunities. The fact that you have so many major Black cities with abandoned schools speaks to how dysfunctional and selfish we are. Every abandoned school should have been purchased by the Black community and turned into an independent school, independent training center, entrepreneurship incubator, community center. We should own every abandoned school in every city. But because we are so financially disorganized and unaccountable to one another, we can't provide our children with the opportunities that they want. See, you have to make it easy for Black children to feel like a part of the Black community. You can't make it difficult. See, it's easy for Jewish kids to feel like a part of the Jewish community because they can get services from their own community. They don't have to go outside. Chinese children don't have to go outside. Mexican children don't have to go outside their community. for a job, a scholarship, a place to live, some food to eat. Black children, they have to go out their community because we as a community don't have many services to offer them. And the few services that we do have are mostly being subsidized by the white power structure, so they don't belong to us either. What are we doing for our children, systemically and institutionally, separate from white people, separate from the government, separate from white subsidy, to help our children? Not much at all. If we want their attention, you have to build institutions and opportunities. We can get them back, but whatever we bring to them, it got to be relevant. We are not relevant to them. And until selling that crack, that's relevant. That's going to give them money. They can pay their bills, take care of their child. We got to be relevant to them. And that means institutions and opportunities. And if you provide them with the financial opportunities that they need, they'll gladly come to you. But without any opportunity, they'll never pay us any attention.
And see, and that's the other thing, Dr. Umar, when you was talking about having to, build institutions. I totally agree with you. I don't think I could talk to young men if I'm not trying to build something. Me personally, I've been trying to build something for a while. And so has Tanya. That's why we reached out to you. Great minds think alike. But I also have to look at what these young people see. They're bombarded with drugs because another thing I wanted to talk about is with drugs come a culture. A lot of the drugs is blamed on hip hop, but there were several drug cultures that we lived through. The 60s drug culture, the 70s disco drug culture, the 80s, and now you have the hip hop where it's the pills in the hood and everything, right? We need to see some more examples. Now, here's the problem that I have. There are people like yourself, Dr. Umar, who step up and say, let me build something. There are people like Tanya. There are some preachers that I've met, that step up and say, I want to do something. You know what I'm saying? I'm one of them. But you know what I see that the young people see? They see people like Dr. Umar get attacked.
Yes.
They see people like Tanya, black women like Tanya, not get supported. They see people like myself who doesn't think about numbers, but thinks about a human life. And they say, well, money is first. So a lot of people who try to step up and do, they're attacked. You know what I'm saying? I watched you get attacked for years. While there were people out really doing criminal stuff and nobody said nothing.
Right.
So this, when we are fighting each other like this, Dr. Umar, this concerns me because listen, I'm grateful. My father is in recovery. He's turned his life around, but a lot of the men, a lot of cousins that I had died in the street, got shot by gangbangers or, drugs and all that. So I'm grateful for where I'm at. But my whole thing is, where's the support for the men who are stepping up? You understand what I'm saying? Because we'll promote our communities and our society. We'll promote some dude with gold teeth in his mouth and pointing a gun, but we don't promote the Dr. Umars. We don't promote the Tanyas. We don't promote, you know what I'm saying, the positive people in our society. If anything, we want to find something wrong with them.
And part of the reason for that is from our children's perspective, the people who appear to be winning are the dysfunctional ones. They look at the multi-million-dollar athletes. They look at the multi-million-dollar entertainers. They look at the multi-million-dollar hip-hop artists, and from where they're standing, they say, well, guess what? The guy with the gold teeth pointing the gun, he worth 20 mil. The brother in the community doing the right thing, he barely keeping his lights on. And because we don't raise our children with any integrity or spiritual foundation, they are worshipers of money. That is the religion, the worship of money and materialism. And we also have played a role in this because speaking as an educator and a school psychologist, I've seen firsthand where even in school, the entertainers and athletes within the student population are celebrated way more than those who academically excel. You might be failing every class, but if you're the standout superstar player, you're still going to be celebrated more than the children getting straight A's and B's. So part of this is our fault because we also send our children a mixed message that says athletes and entertainers are more important than everybody else. And the Black church also has a role in this too, because one of the most materialistic places you can be is at a Black church on a Sunday. It looks like you're going to the BET Awards or the Essence Awards. Okay, people got on their Dolce, their Gabbana, their Gucci, their Louis Vuitton. They're rolling up in $100,000 cars, gold chains. Women are dressing like they're off the video. You know, so we also have to look at how we are sending a contradictory message to our children that actually supports the pursuit of money and materialism. You would think going to church, and of course it's not every church, but you would think going to church, you would get a message against the worship of money and materialism. But a lot of churches I've been, no. Those churches look like they could have came right out of a hip hop video. So we got to recognize that the children are only an exaggerated example or manifestation of what the adults are. We're addicted to money. So they are superbly addicted to money. We're addicted to materialism. So they are superbly addicted to materialism. The children are just a minstrel show away from what the adults are. They are not much different than us. They are just more honest about it and more unapologetic. We are hypocritical about it. We will tuck our pursuit of money and materialism behind Jesus and Muhammad. The children don't do that. They tell you right from the gate, I'm about this life.
But you know what? But you know what, Dr. Umar, I do have to say this as somebody who grew up in church, and I appreciate your honesty. What I see,
right? I grew up in there too. But go ahead.
Yeah, I grew up. No, but I grew up old school church. In fact, I'm in ministry myself. I've done jail ministry and everything, right? What I see today, I call it false prophecy. I don't call it Black church. I don't call it, because you know why? The Bible teaches against that. And what I see when people, first of all, these are mega churches too. Like nobody supports the storefront churches anymore. Nobody supports the churches who were involved in the civil rights movement anymore. It's all about the mega churches and all this. And to me, you know, the Bible speaks about false churches and false representatives. These people ain't representing God. If I come to you, Dr. Umar, with gold chains and, you know, glittery shoes and looking like I'm an astronaut or a Martian, you know what I'm saying? That's not representing God. You know what I'm saying? The Bible don't even really tell you all of what Jesus wore, what he looked like. You know what I'm saying? A lot of his description is symbolic. But people like they've done in every religion, people like they do with education, people like they do with all types of philosophies. They take it and use it for what they want, and they prey upon a vulnerable people. You know what I'm saying? And so what I see in the community is that, like you said, there's a breakdown of family. That's how the drugs, that I believe the drugs, you know, the 60s dope era, when a lot of people were sent to Vietnam and came back with a habit. Then you had the crack era. Now you have the medicated society era. There's a pill for everything. There's a pill to help you deal with your emotions rather than have you, you know, talk to a parent. Instead of that, you're taking a pill. And so to me, that's bullying. When you try to take away a person's mind, when a society tries to take away your mind, that's a form of bullying. So I feel like a lot of what we see amongst the youth is not only them imitating the dysfunction of their families who are addicted to drama, but imitating a system, the slave imitating the slave master.
Absolutely so. And again, so much of what we have succumbed to as a people is due to the fact that we have lost ourselves. One thing that we have to also be conscious of when we talk about that biochemical warfare that they hit us with in the 1980s with the double dose of crack and AIDS, we also got to recognize that the 80s, okay, the 70s and the 80s were the first generation of Black people who had an opportunity to escape the ghetto life. So not only is the Black community at its lowest because of AIDS and crack, this is also your first generation of New Jack middle class Black. So whereas before, if we were still segregated from white folks when they dropped off the crack and the AIDS, we would have had to face it. we would have had to combat it. But guess what? This is at the same time those brothers and sisters who gained from the civil rights era were now beginning to finish their PhDs. They were finishing law school. They were finishing med school. And rather than come back into the Black community where they were once segregated, you now had the Fair Housing Act that we got at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. They said, I'm not going to put up with this crap. I'm not going to help my community fight back against these ills. I'm going to run to the white suburb. So we have to make sure that working class Black America and middle class Black America gets their fair share of the responsibility of what's happening in our community, because these were the people we needed to come back and help uplift. And instead, because they were the babies of the civil rights era, they turned their back on the same community that fought for them to get those opportunities they have.
Wow, that's deep. That's a lot. That is a lot. Wow. You really gave us a little historical perspective on that, which I wasn't expecting, but thank you, because that's in the summary. Like, what do you expect from our kids? They see,
and you got to look at how we raise our children. Think about this now. What makes one of the differences between the way Black children are raised and children of every other culture. And mind you, some of them are just as religious as we are. Okay. Nobody exceeds us, but they're just as religious as we are, at least on the surface.
Right.
And so one of the biggest differences is those children are taught loyalty to their race and integrity towards the community. No Mexican child is going to ever do anything publicly against Mexican people. No Jewish kid is going to ever do anything publicly and knowingly and blatantly against the Jewish people. No Chinese child is ever going to do that. Black children will do it, and they will do it without regard, because the adults have already provided an example that you do not have to be loyal to your community, and you do not have to show any community level of shame. When you have people, not to get off topic, but when you have people like Charles Barkley, Candace Owens, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, Jesse Lee Peterson, these are Negroes who publicly go against their own race. Show me their equivalent in another culture. There is no Candace Owens in another culture. There is no Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas in another culture. There is no Charles Barkley in another culture. There is no Jesse Lee Peterson in another culture. We're the only people who tolerate betrayal amongst us. And not only do we tolerate the betrayal often comes from those in our community who are the most well-placed in society. In other groups, the Benedict Arnold is normally a nobody. In the Black community, the Benedict Arnold is always a big time somebody. So the best of us can often be found working against the best interests of the community. They raise their children with a cultural code of conduct. A cultural code of conduct.
Yes.
Chinese, Arab, East Indian, Anglo-Saxon, European Jew, Mexican. Our children don't have a cultural code. They have a religious code. So the only thing they have to do is be careful about their behavior in the presence of Christians, or be careful about your behavior in the presence of Jehovah's Witnesses, or be careful about your behavior in the presence of Muslims. In other words, they're taught to respect their religion only. There is no cultural code of conduct. And we are the only community who do not practice or raise our children with a cultural code of conduct. Anything goes when it comes to your Blackness, but religion, think twice. Your people, your blood, your flesh, you can do whatever you want to do to them.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm and not to defend it, but I always come back to that part, very important part, that because of the whole slavery and all that stuff that went on way back when, it's still, you know, Jim Crow said it. I'll keep you enslaved 400 years after you're out of slavery. That's not the exact quote, but that's pretty much it. And he meant by the mind. And I think that the trauma that we have received as a people on all levels and still continue to receive, has been so embedded that that's where we actually were trained to lose all of that. We're the only group of people in my, and I could be wrong because you know more about history than I do, but I could be wrong. But it appears to me that we're the only group of people that were literally mind screwed, as I'll say it nicely, mind screwed, and
we're the only ones who showed up in America as imports, not immigrants.
Well, yeah, but even I mean, no matter who we were, whether we were here first and they told us we came, but we really were already here, some of us, but whatever it is, we were the only group of people from what I'm seeing. All the other groups, they may have been enslaved, they may have been in some trauma, they may have been whatever, everything might happen to them, but we're the only group of people who were literally told from babies to little kids, like, you better not like him. Yeah, you better not like him, and don't be loyal to her, and don't do this. Our families was ripped apart and shredded and stamped on and thrown away.
But that's not why we're in our predicament, though. You're absolutely correct, Queen.
Okay.
We're the only ones who showed up as imports, not immigrants. We're the only ones who went through the dehumanizing tragedy of American slavery. But that's not why we are where we are.
Okay, so go ahead.
Not completely. We are where we are because we choose not to do anything about it.
Okay.
We have to be clear.
It's our accountability.
The U.S. government is not going to solve Black people's problems because the U.S. government created the problems.
Exactly.
And they benefit from. So they're not going to solve the problem. So that automatically means, what are we going to do separate from the government to address our own dysfunction? That is the eternal question. And the reason we don't like to answer it, not you and I, but as a people, the reason we don't like to answer that question is we know in order to solve our problems, it's going to require sacrifice of time, energy, and money. And if it's three things Black people do not like to give to other Black people, unless it's in the name of religion, is time, energy, and money. And money is the biggest one. You know why? We're the only people in America. No other group. That will not use their disposable income to create opportunities and pathways for themselves and their children. And you know what's sick about that? We're a $2 trillion entity. Black America is not broke as a group. We may be broke as individuals, but we are not broke as a group. We have at least a dozen billionaires. Oprah Winfrey is the richest woman in the history of the North American continent. Not Black, not white, not brown, not yellow, not red. She's the richest woman, period, in the history of the North American continent. You got your Sean Carters, you got your Sean Combs, you got your Tyler Perrys, you got your Rihannas, you got your Bob Johnsons, you got your Kanye's. But guess what? Between all of your billionaires, and the only person I'm going to give a partial pass to is Tyler Perry, because with the movie studio, there's the potential for him to bring about a serious systemic change. If he gets off the Medea track and start giving us some serious qualitative content.
Can I ask you a question about
that? Outside of him, and outside of that potentiality, which has not manifested yet, what institution has any Black billionaire created for Black America? Now let's go to the millionaires. What relevant institution has any of the millionaires created for Black America? Now let's come to our Black professionals. What relevant institutions have they built? All I'm seeing is barbershops and restaurants. And there's nothing wrong with barbershops and restaurants. But guess what? You will not die if you don't get your hair done. You will not die if you don't eat out. But you will die if you don't got healthy food supermarket. You will die if you don't have a doctor to take care of your illness hospital. You will die if you have no way to invest in yourself to create a job or a business, the bank. You will die if you're not properly educated to survive in this racially competitive world. School. So we need schools, we need banks, we need hospitals, we need supermarkets, and we need distribution and manufacturing sectors. but that takes money. That takes commitment. And most Black people are not interested. Most of us are gambling. We are political gamblers. We believe I can roll the dice.
Yes.
And white racism will spare me. Yes. White racism will spare my wife. Yes. White racism will spare my parents. White racism will spare my children. White racism will spare my business. You know, one thing about Emmett Till, Mammy Till Mobley, she said in one of the movies that recently came out about Emmett Till's life, she said, when I heard about things happening in the South, I didn't pay it any mind. I thought that was their problem, not mine. It wasn't until they killed my son that I had to recognize the problems of Black people anywhere are the problems of Black people everywhere. Why does it always take for us to go through a personal trauma before we start caring about the all?
You absolutely right. And I just want to make this last point, Dr. Umar. That's why I really take into consideration I don't have a son, I got 2 daughters.
Likewise.
Right. But I really take into consideration how we raise Black men, because I've mentored a lot of Black men. And one of the things that bothers me, no other culture raises their sons to be hard, tough, not to cry. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that preps them for death. And the reason why I'm saying that, I have a wife and 2 daughters. Somebody teaching me the mentality of act hard, don't show no pain, be tougher than a white man, be tougher than everybody else. When I got married to a Black woman and I have 2 Black daughters, that mentality won't work. And see, in order to build communities like you're saying, in order for us to be able to build again, we have to have Black men who are not raised to think like animals, procreate, fight, and make money.
That's very true, my brother. Now, with that being said, there is something to say for the need for masculinity within the community. However, to your point, you're speaking of a dysfunctional form of masculinity, almost a hyper masculinity that ironically and paradoxically is never available when Black people are being beat up upon. And see, that's the great contradiction of the gangster lean. We see it on the rap videos. We see it on the street corners. We never see it with the police. George Zimmerman still living his best life. Most of these police killers, they still living their best life. So one of the contradictions of the Black gangster culture is it has never came to the defense of the Black community. If we're so hard, so gangster, so tough, why doesn't the enemies of the Black community ever feel your gangster? Why is it the only people who ever feel your gangster are the people who look like you?
Right. Wow. Well, that's so prevalent, man. Wow. You gave us a lot to think about. And I can't believe an hour went that quick, Doctor. What is some advice that you can give us as parents, as if a youth is watching? What is something that you can give us to take away that maybe we can start building this thing that we need to, this machine that we actually need to build to get things going?
Well, number one, we got to recognize we living in a time where social media is driving more space between us as a race. We do not come together and congregate anymore. Social media has destroyed the need for you to leave your house and go to a mutual place to sit and talk with other Black people, right? So we have to bring that back. We have to bring the study group back. We got to bring the town hall meetings back. We have to bring that general community conversation back, because social media has separated us from each other. And one of the big downfalls of social media is it has eliminated the remorse you feel when you offend somebody in the first person. Since I have this screen to protect me from you, I can insult you, disrespect you, and feel no remorse for it because I don't have to see your reaction in real time. We're separated by this computer screen. And as a result of that, I think Black people are even more harsher against other Black people. We are more critical, more condemnatory. We have this whole cancel culture. We want to cancel Black people the minute they make a mistake, as if we haven't made tons of them ourselves. And so I think social media has been a curse to Black America. And I think we have to get back to being community. That means common unity. That means let's start coming together. Let's meet. Let's talk. We got to go back to the town hall meeting. And Black people always say, I'm tired of meetings. Well, guess what? Chinese people meet, Arabs meet, Jews meet, everybody meets. Without no meeting, there is no organization. There's no such thing as organizing without a meeting. But the problem with us, we ain't got no patience for each other. We ain't got no tolerance for each other. We ain't got no empathy for each other. You know, some of us are worse bigots towards each other than the white man could ever be towards us.
That's deep. That is very deep.
Yeah, somebody told me that we're all out. We are worst enemies. Somebody said that.
No, we're our second worst though. Even though we can treat each other worse, we're not our worst enemy. And I say that because the white power structure actually invests in our destruction. They invested in COVID. They invested in AIDS. They invested in crack. They invested in the school to prison pipeline. They invested in gentrification. They invest in child sex trafficking. We don't invest in our downfall. We simply participate in it.
Exactly. Wow. Well, let's stop participating in the downfall, people. And I'm going to look into all those great ideas. It just mind boggles me. All the celebrities who have money, even the people that are not celebrities that have the money, and see all those abandoned buildings in poor neighborhoods. And I'm like, why haven't they bought them up? But I know there's a trick to that. There's a whole trick to why they're not bought up. It's intentional.
Yes, it's intentional. And the other part about that too, Queen, is you have to deal with the proximity to whiteness. See, a lot of our well-to-do Negroes, working class, middle class, upper middle class, rich millionaires and billionaires, they love their proximity to whiteness. Yeah. So that means if I have a comfortable social circle of white people, I'm given the privilege of going to their dinners, their balls, their celebrations, living in their neighborhood, doing business with their banks and their corporate entities. If they catch me trying to build a Black school, if they catch me fighting against mass incarceration, if they catch me protesting against gentrification, they are going to know that I know I'm not one of them. They're going to know that I recognize my Blackness as distinct from their own. And one of the quickest ways to get thrown out of white society is to make it known that you know you are Black and you're willing to do something for Black people. So it is that privilege and that access to white society that they have that they don't want to lose. Let's take Oprah again, right? Oprah has enough money. White people ain't got to give her another penny. She good. But guess what? Oprah loves the privilege of participating in their society. You see how that works? Yes. Jay-Z loves the privilege of going to those balls, those invitation-only dinners, you know, going on a yacht. They love access to white society, and we're talking about white elite society. And they know that if they get caught helping Black people, they will be disidentified from those circles. They care more about socializing with white people than liberating Blacks.
But it's just so, every day I wake up saying, I can't believe that they have the money to do that, and they didn't do it.
But let us be honest too, though. I want to make sure, just like we don't want to scapegoat Black mothers at the bottom of the totem pole, I don't want to scapegoat Black billionaires at the top either.
Right.
And this is what I say.
Right.
We have never had a Black billionaire come to the rescue of Black America.
Well,
we have had celebrities. We have had celebrities step into help. Harry Belafonte stepped in to help. Dick Gregory, who was a personal friend of mine, he stepped in to help Malcolm and Medgar and Martin. Harry Belafonte stepped in. You've had celebrities from time to time step in. You've never had a billionaire do it. You've never had a billionaire do it. But not only that, it is not fair for us to ask them to sacrifice billions when we won't even sacrifice hundreds. It's not fair. It's not fair to go to Tyler Perry or Jay-Z or Oprah or Puffy or Bob Johnson or Rihanna and say, listen, we need $1 billion. And they look at us, why should I sacrifice?
Right. You ain't
Y'all don't sacrifice nothing. So the point that I'm making, we have to lead by example. And once we lead by example, the celebrities and the millionaires and billionaires, they will follow us because they will have no choice. Once we get organized, they will have no choice. But to ask them to start it, to ask them to be the Christ, to ask them to be the martyr, it's not fair to ask a billionaire or a millionaire to sacrifice millions and billions when you yourself have done nothing to change your condition. When we do it at the grassroots level, they will naturally fall in with us. Let's take the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy.
Yes.
I haven't gotten any celebrity donations, right? Even though I know a lot of celebrities. I know these guys. They talk to me on the phone. They come to my lectures. I know these guys. And I'm not talking low-level celebrity. I'm talking about tip of the top. I know them.
Right.
But guess what? They got to see me bring that elementary school into fruition.
Yes.
Once they see it, some of them are going to say, I ain't got no choice but to help him with the rest of the schools.
Exactly.
Because he did it on his own without my money and without no white money. We have to show and prove first. We can't expect them to support when they don't see no evidence of progress. It's on us to lead. Most of our movements were not financed by wealthy blacks. They were financed by brothers and sisters in the street. The Panthers, the Garvey movement, the Civil Rights movement, the Deacons for Defense. They were all financed by the community, not wealthy blacks. It is our job to save our children.
But you know what, Dr. Umar? One of the problems that I see why we don't even want to sacrifice time, which is even more valuable than money, is because we too in love with competing against each other.
Absolutely.
Ooh,
we suffer from the HNIC syndrome. Head Negro in charge. And that ego of the Negro that you're talking about, my brother, it is one of the worst weapons of mass destruction in the black community. And it has its roots on the plantation. Because on the plantation, there was only one overseer. On the plantation, there was only one manager of the slave quarters. And so we were conditioned through slavery to believe only one black person could make it at a time. And that mindset is with us now. So if I see you win, guess what? I automatically think I can't because you win. Who said only one person can be successful? Why can't we all win? Why don't we have an abundance mentality instead of a limitations mentality? And we have a limitations mentality because the slave plantation was all about awarding one Negro at a time. Even when we got off the plantation, the white power structure was organized to do what? Reward one Negro at a time. So most of us, the minute we see a black person win, we say, I can't win because they already did. There's room for all of us. We got to get out of this mindset of lack and get into the mindset of abundance. And also align with that is we have to look at ourselves as a one people. We have gotten away from oneness. We preach one God. And we do a good job preaching one God. But we don't do a good job preaching one people.
No.
One people means what happens to you happens to me. What happens to her happens to me. If she loses, I lose. If she win, I win. But because the ego of the Negro, which is the most European part of our psyche, by the way, dictates competition with other blacks instead of collaboration. And that is another big reason why we cannot win, because we're too busy trying to be the HNIC, failing to recognize we can all win.
Well, one last question, and it only comes because you just said it. So I had a nonprofit for 12 years, and I started and everyone told me I couldn't do it, whatever. And sad to say, well, now I'm happy to say because the kids got what they needed, but I could not get I could not get a full-fledged amount of black support at all. And it was shameful that none of the black churches was like, oh, we'll help you. Only one let me do our packing there. They did that. But nobody was like, here's $2, here's $5. A couple members did, but nobody really did it. It was only the white churches and my white friends from high school who were like, I'm going to help this cause because this has to be something has to be done. And I was the one in charge and nobody tried to take over. It was nice. And everybody, we helped a lot of kids. What do I do in cases like that where you're trying to say, well, we have to help each other and just do our own thing. But then there's other times where there's people who really sincerely want to help and not take over or make it their thing. I'm a type of person, if you're willing to help and these kids need it, we're getting it done. I'll get it done by any means necessary that's legal. You know what I'm saying? But so what do I do? What do you do in a case like that? I did this for 12 years. I gave up because nobody in our community really wanted to. I don't know why. At the end, I got some sororities involved, some Black sororities in the end. I did get some. One came and they all came. So that was good. That was really good. But in the beginning, that's not who was helping me at all. And I didn't say anything because I'm the type of person, if God puts it on my heart, I'm doing it. I don't care how much money it is. I don't care if there's no money. I'm doing it. Because to me, there may be one kid that won't commit suicide, that won't be on drugs, that won't be in the street. That's how I see it. So, but what do we do in cases like that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yes, I know exactly what you're saying. You're speaking to the lack of sacrifice. We have lost our sacrificial spirit, which is interesting because we got out of slavery because of that sacrificial spirit. We got through civil rights because of that sacrificial spirit. But again, in the aftermath of the civil rights era, America hit us with an opportunity for social advancement, along with a steady diet of useless, materialistic tokens and pranks, and we gobbled it right up. We are extremely selfish, extremely materialistic, and we now judge our worth based on what we own. That is also something that differentiates Black people from other people. No other group judges their value by what they own. White people, by and large, judge their value by what they control. Black people judge their value by what they own. So they make it, we buy it. But to your point, we are bandwagon people. I saw this with the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. All them years we were raising money trying to find a school. All the false allegations that were thrown at me, all the people who stood on the sideline. Now that the school is done, I'm hearing from all kinds of people. Where were you guys when I was on the ground, the grassroots level? Where were you when I was school hunting? Not everybody wants to work at the school, but you never even donated $1 to it. So we have to recognize that we are bandwagon people. Black people have so little faith in one another, so little faith that we will only join your effort after we see you winning. And that's a shame because that means it's going to take you longer to win because you got to do it by yourself. Now, once you start winning, they all going to come. Like right now, I'm being inundated with people want to help, want to work, want to volunteer at FDMG. But where were you for the past 9 years when we was getting this school done? You were nowhere to be found, waiting on the sidelines to see if I would fail or not. Unfortunately, there's many Black people who share the same story with me because we have no faith in each other to win. When you come with an idea, we don't believe you until you prove that you can implement it.
Yes, that's a big thing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Umar. This has been so helpful. And I know parents or anybody watching who works with children or works with teens, they've got to have a takeaway from this today, something to take away. So I appreciate
it. And also, I just want to let your listening audience know, I'll be speaking at Tennessee State University this Friday and Saturday. I'll be speaking at Syracuse University October the 25th. I will be in Nat Turnerland, Virginia, October the 2nd. And I will be in Wilmington, North Carolina, November the 11th. I'll be in Africa in a couple of weeks, in Brazil in November. But if anybody needs any of the flyers for the upcoming events, feel free to text my phone, 215-989-9858. Again, if you want to donate to the school, you can also text me for that information, 215-989.
Yeah, I'll send it to you, Tanya.
And if anyone has issues about their children, special ed, autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual problems, depression, suicide, if you need any consultation, you can also text me to schedule a private consult.
Okay. So 215-989.
9858.
9858, guys. I'll just put it there for you if you need it. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I think there's so much to work to be done. And now you just re-inspired me. I closed my nonprofit because I didn't want any government grants. I didn't want any of that. And we survived. 12 years. I don't know how many, 12 years unofficially.
You might got to bring it back open, Queen. It might be time to go back.
It might be, but I'm going to do it under different guys, because now what you talk, with you talking about having things for the youth, it's very important that whatever the model is, that they're incorporated in it. So I was giving them scholarships before and mentoring and gift boxes for the aged out foster youth in college, but I think I can do it even bigger. I think there's something. Thank you for re-inspiring me. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Somebody's got to do it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brother Rich. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you too, brother.
Yes.
I know you're a busy man.
Yes, I know. And we were blessed to have you. So we really appreciate you coming on for us. And I want to thank you, viewers, and Dr. Umar's viewers. Thank you so much for chiming in. I can't see some of you, so I apologize, but we're here and we appreciate you for logging in, and we hope that you share it, because there's lots of nuggets in here that the doctor gave us. So if you don't know what to do in the community, you're just not paying attention, and that's part of the problem. We need to all pay attention. It takes a village to raise a child, and especially for our Black children who are not being, I feel like they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, and that's why we're getting 100 going to the mall and saying, let's grab this, because no one's listening to them. So, well, you don't want to listen? Because I'll show you that I exist. I'll show you. It may not.
And you also have to look at the demand characteristics of the situation too, Queen. And what I mean by that, psychologically speaking, people act like they are treated. It's a very true psychological phenomenon. There's been research done on this. The Stanford prison experiment. There's been other research done that shows treat somebody like a criminal, they will act like one. Treat somebody like a nobody, they will act like one. And I'm bringing this up because the white power structure disingenuously tries to separate the treatment of Black children from Black children's behavior. You see, if you're going to if you're going to treat me like a thief whenever I walk into this mall, since you want to keep following me around, since you want to keep trying to kick me out and treat me like I'm a nobody, the next time I come in this mall, I'm going to take everything in here.
Yes.
So we have to look at how, not to excuse it because it's still wrong, but we have to look at how the children are responding to the way they are being treated, including school. In the schools, so often our children are treated like petty criminals. So they act the role.
Exactly.
You're right.
Separate environment from the energy of the people inside of it.
And that's why I made the point, Dr. Umar, really quick, about how Black men are treated and they're groomed to be tough. That's how my father ended up getting shot by the police. Because when my father got shot by the police, he had a history of violence. But how he grew up was you had to be tough. He got shot twice in the chest. He just didn't die. My grandmother was a praying woman.
Yes, sir.
But that's what happens when, there's a difference between masculinity and being mad. Dogs get mad, but masculinity also involves wisdom. That's how I run my household.
Yes.
Wisdom. If I just went off every time something happened, my daughters wouldn't have a father and my wife wouldn't have a husband.
That's right. Powerful.
That's powerful stuff right there. Well, thank you so much again. And I learned so much that sometimes you think, oh, what more can I know about teenagers? I know there's always something more. There's always something, and it's always changing every minute. So I appreciate you coming, because I know you keep your ear to the streets, so you know what's really going on. And I was looking at some of the parents you were talking to doing the IEP things and trying to give them advice. I love that because as someone who was an educator and in schools, I'd look and want to scream out and say, no, don't take the label. But I couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? Because I'd lose my job. So when I see you doing this, people don't understand the relevance it is for these children. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand, especially like foster children. They get labeled all the time, and it's going on and on. But now as a community, if you're out there listening and you're hearing things, now you know what you got to do. If you're a teacher in the classroom, you know what you got to do. I shouldn't even have to tell you anymore. You heard the best message you will probably ever hear if you're really serious about changing how our youth are behaving and where their future is going. And guess what? If you don't care, that's good, because they'll be seeing you at your house. That's all. That's how that goes. So There you go. I appreciate you guys so much. And I appreciate all you viewers out there. I see you all. We appreciate you. And we really hope that you share. And again, it's to share because somebody needs this message. That's it. That's the bottom line. Somebody who might say, yeah, I can buy that building. I can do this. I can start a program for young people, because there is nothing for them right now. Nothing in none of the towns, even my little rich town, there's nothing. They took away the skating rink. How do you take away a skating rink? Like, that's like, they took it away. They started drinking. Now they're doing the smoking and getting the fentanyl, and they're doing this and they're doing that. That's everywhere. It's going on everywhere. So if you're listening and you're part of the community, you know people, you can get it done yourself. You don't need the government and everybody else to help you. One person at a time. That's all it takes. And they told me I couldn't do a nonprofit. I did it for 12 years, never took a government grant, and I raised money and I helped thousands of kids. Why? Because of you guys, because of the community. That's how I did it. I couldn't do it by myself. So thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate you so much. And guys, we'll be back next week. I appreciate you. And till then, Doctor, hang out for a minute. We'll say goodbye to everybody. And thank you so much. We appreciate you.